This is Talking Football with two bald guys. I'm Adam.
I'm Tony.
Tony, that is the Boise State fight song.
Yes, it is.
They're getting ready to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions, and they are trying to prove that they belong because a lot of the teams in the first round did not.
That's correct. Were you disappointed? I know you're a big fan of this
Yeah, I was, and we're going to dive deeper into that. A little surprised, a little disappointed, yes.
Okay.
But we'll get into that here in a second. Like I said, we're Talking Football, two bald guys, part of Elevation5280sports.com. Or I'm sorry, that's E5280sports.com. And again, go there, check out our pod, check out the other pods that are there.
Yep, good stuff.
A lot of good stuff. And then we partnership with Happy Nuts. We've talked about this a ton. We're getting stuff. Hopefully some of you guys are listening or getting some stuff for Christmas.
You should have probably already got your stuff. It's a few days before Christmas here. We're on Monday before Christmas. And get your Happy Nuts stuff. Still get it. I mean, still got New Year's and stuff like that. There's still gift giving going on for the next few weeks. So use two bald guys, 20.
Yeah.
Get yourself 20% off and save some money on that stuff. And take care of your man stuff down.
Take care of your man stuff. Save some money. It's a win-win for all the guys out there. All right. College football. All the home teams won. And all of the home teams won rather convincingly.
Right.
Texas was the only one that seemed to kind of get challenged. The other teams did not. Indiana ended up losing by only 10, but they scored 2 touchdowns in I think the last 2 or 3 minutes. SMU decided they wanted to throw the ball to Penn State more than they wanted to throw it to themselves. Tennessee was embarrassed. Clemson did keep it close against Texas. They were down big and then kind of made a run. Klubnik played pretty well. They just couldn't stop the Texas offense.
The running game for Texas.
So you asked, was I disappointed? Yes, I would have liked to see closer games.
Right.
Obviously, I would like to see Ohio State lose because I never want to see them win.
Correct.
But I was a little surprised at that game, and I thought SMU would put up a little bit better of a fight. Indiana, we talked about. We weren't sure.
Yeah, I was not surprised at Indiana. I know you kind of liked Indiana. I was hoping that they would be the Cinderella, that they had a great regular season, then they just kind of didn't show up. SMU, again, I think Penn State was too much, but the Tennessee-Ohio State game I was really looking forward to.
Yeah.
And then when Ohio State just punched Tennessee right in the face from the get-go, I was like, what happened?
And then Tennessee got it back to 21-10, had the ball to start the second half, but then got nothing, and Ohio State went back to score.
Yep.
And we talked about this. The way to beat Ohio State is not give up big plays. What did Tennessee do?
The first quarter, the first few plays, big passing plays. Jeremiah Smith is great, but you cannot beat Ohio State if you let them do that.
No, and that's what everybody's like, well, how did Michigan beat that team? Well, Michigan played better defensively against that team. They shut him down. They pressured Will Howard. They made Will Howard beat him, and they couldn't do it.
And he can't. And Tennessee didn't. Tennessee gave up big plays. I don't know if Ohio State was able to see something. And is it Chip Kelly there, their offensive coordinator?
Yep.
He had a great game plan against them, and they did what they have to do to win. Michigan doesn't let them do that.
Right.
And that Michigan has the script. Just follow it.
Tennessee left their guys on an island with their receivers.
Yes, they played
and
man.
Ohio State's receivers are very, very good. Michigan bracketed. I was reading about it. I don't know defenses well enough to know what exactly they did. But they said they bracketed them up. They didn't let them go one-on-one very often.
Right.
And they also kept everything in front of them. Even in the drive where Ohio State scored against Michigan on the touchdown, they drove down and they kept it in front of them, except for the one play they got behind because he pushed off on the guy, which whatever, it could be a penalty. But Michigan made them drive the ball and made them throw it in front, and they just can't do it consistently enough. A lot of teams have a trouble doing that consistently, but Tennessee did not do that.
Well, when you make them drive and go 8, 9, 10, 12 plays, you get a chance of a holding call that puts them behind the chains. You get maybe a sack in there. You make Will Howard or whoever throw the ball more than he wants to, and he'll make a mistake eventually, and he did against Michigan.
And he did throw an interception against Tennessee, but it just wasn't enough. They didn't have enough. Now, Tennessee was without their star running back, and that hurts. But I don't know if it would have made a difference.
No, absolutely not, because that defense was not stopping anybody.
No, it wasn't stopping anybody. But the biggest thing is, and you keep seeing these all the time, especially after the SMU Indiana game, all these people, Lane Kiffin included, said, "Man, great television here, great game."
Kirk Herbstreit was saying the same thing. I don't know if you saw what he said.
And I'm just like, win your games though. Win your games. Like what, what I'm saying? Like the thing I kind of want, and I know you don't want it because you're in SEC a little bit, is I would love for Notre Dame to go out and whip Georgia and Arizona State to beat Texas. And then you're like, what? What now, SEC?
Right. Your two best teams who made the allegedly the best conference, they made the championship game, they get beat. Now, do I think that's going to happen? I don't know. We can talk about that in a minute. But the SEC homers, and I'm not quite a homer yet, but I am.
You're getting
I
there.
do have to defend them a little bit because
Oklahoma's in there. I get it.
So the SEC homers say, "Oh, Bama should have been. Bama should have been in. Bama should have been in." No, if anybody has an argument about, okay, maybe Indiana shouldn't have been in there, great. Bama's not even the next team on the list to go in. It would be Miami.
It should be Miami. I think so. And honestly, I think it'd be Ole Miss before Bama. Because if you just line it up, I think Ole Miss has a better argument than Bama.
Correct. So Bama fans who are pushing for this, oh, Bama should have been in, Bama would have won that game, et cetera, et cetera. You're not even the next team that should be in consideration. Right. I know that maybe the rankings, it looks like you should be, but Miami only has 2 losses.
It should have been Miami.
And they should be the next one in over Indiana.
But see, they would have said the same thing. Well, Miami didn't have a tough schedule. This schedule that we had to go through, the gauntlet of the SEC. And it looks like the SEC is good. But at the same time, somebody's like, the teams that played Ohio State tougher than Tennessee.
Well, I mean, Michigan won.
We'll pull out
Michigan beat them.
So hold on, let me pull out Ohio State's schedule.
So I want to here, and this goes along the lines of Ohio State's schedule. People are commenting that the Ohio State is the 4th best team in the Big Ten based on the rankings.
Yeah,
but that's not really true because Ohio State beat Penn State and Indiana. So don't use that argument, Big Ten people. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, but Ohio State is not the 4th best team in the Big Ten. They are 2nd best team to Oregon.
Teams. So Tennessee lost to Ohio State by 25 points. Indiana lost to them by 23. Northwestern lost to them by 24. Purdue got whipped. Penn State lost to them by 7. Nebraska lost to them by 4. Iowa lost to them by 28.
Nebraska played them closer.
Yeah, 31. So it was those teams. So Oregon beat them, obviously. Nebraska, Penn State, Northwestern, Indiana all played Ohio State closer than Tennessee. And Tennessee, mind you, beat Alabama.
Correct. And Tennessee had another week to prepare. Ohio State was at home. Yep. Okay, which that doesn't make up that big of a difference. Tennessee came up and they definitely let the SEC homers down for sure because everyone was SEC this.
But
SEC
it's funny, everybody is giving Tennessee a pass. Yes, they got beat the most, but they beat some people during the year is what they tried to say.
And they didn't lose to a bad team. Ohio State is not a bad team.
No, they're not.
Obviously they're in the playoffs for a reason, but Ohio State's a really good football team. The loss to Michigan, we're looking down on Ohio State. That's still a really good football team out there.
This is who Tennessee beat this year. They beat Chattanooga. That's bad. NC State ended up being bad. Kent State's bad. Oklahoma,
not good.
Again, beat Bama.
Correct.
Lost to Arkansas.
That's an awful loss.
Needed overtime to beat Florida, which Florida ended up playing better. They did beat Bama. Okay, cool. Beat Kentucky by 10. That's not a great win. Beat Mississippi State by 19. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're wins. I'm just saying they're not like – it's not that dominant win. Yeah. Lost to Georgia, beat UTEP and Vanderbilt. So if you're looking at their schedule truthfully, they beat one team.
They beat Bama.
One more team than Indiana did. I get it. They're saying Indiana didn't beat anybody great. But if you're going to say – you can't say Florida was a great win and then say Indiana beat Michigan's not a great win.
Right.
Because they're about the same level, I think.
The same, yeah. Yeah, Tennessee's, I don't know why their strength of schedule is where it's at. I don't know where Tennessee's strength of schedule is. I think it's up there for whatever reason.
But I mean,
they didn't play South Carolina. They didn't play Ole Miss. They didn't play Missouri. They didn't play a lot of those SEC teams.
Now, Oklahoma was ranked at the time, but as we saw Oklahoma,
they fell apart.
They were 6-6. Yeah. Florida was 7-5. But Florida played much better at the end of the year than they did at the beginning when the middle of the year when they took Tennessee to overtime. Again, they do have the win over against Alabama. We're not taking that away from them. But then it's Kentucky, Mississippi State, UTEP, Vanderbilt. That's nothing to write home about. Like, you can't tell me Indiana's schedule was that much softer outside of Alabama and Georgia.
The Arkansas loss is
you lost
probably
Arkansas.
The worst loss out of any team that's in the playoff.
Yeah.
And look at all the losses the teams in the playoff have. I don't think anybody – Arkansas had, 3 wins?
Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. And then they're going to be like, oh, they can't beat Northern Illinois. Let's get out of here. Okay. I get it. But Notre Dame took care of everything else.
Might be worse. But maybe.
But I hated those people that are sitting there like every SEC team would have beat – not everybody, but the top SEC teams would have beat Notre Dame and Indiana that day. You don't know that. You cannot say that. You could think maybe they would, but at the same time, you have to win the games because
not Notre Dame. I'll say Indiana probably, but not. Notre
Dame. I mean, with the way Florida played at the end of the year, they did play better. They were 7-5. I mean, Florida might have been favored against SMU. They might have been favored against Indiana. Don't go 7-5. You can't sit there and be like, well, this team would have been favored, so they have to be in. You can't say that.
So, are you saying wins and losses are still the premier criteria to get into the playoff.
To a point, yes, because then you make the regular season irrelevant.
That's one of my biggest fears of this whole thing. Is
if you just start throwing SEC teams in there because they're in the SEC, I think I just said it. You can't just do that.
So what you need then is you need Georgia and Texas to lose.
I would love for that to happen
right now.
Yeah,
done.
I mean, you wouldn't hate it if Texas lost.
I don't know. I don't hate that at all. I don't care. I mean, I think Georgia's probably going to win, but I don't really care that much. But Texas has got to go for sure.
Yeah. If Arizona State beats Texas and Notre Dame beats Georgia, the SEC should shut up.
Then just be quiet because your top dogs.
Shut up.
Your 3 top teams apparently are out.
But then they're going to be like, well, Alabama and Mississippi could have done better. Well,
no,
don't lose. Don't lose.
They lost to SEC teams. That's what.
Well, they're going to be like, well, Alabama beat Georgia. Okay, cool. You lost to a mediocre Oklahoma team and a mediocre Vanderbilt team.
Correct.
And Vanderbilt kind of controlled that game, and Oklahoma definitely controlled that game. They scored 3 points against Oklahoma.
Correct.
Ole Miss lost to Kentucky.
Right. That's bad. That's another bad. That Kentucky loss is a bad loss. I mean, Kentucky was not good. Would they have 4 wins? Kentucky had 4 wins on.
They're 4-8.
And they're 4-8. They beat Ole Miss. So Ole Miss, you don't have an argument. Bama, you don't have an argument. South Carolina, maybe because
they kind of got screwed against LSU.
But that's why Bama, you're not even there's not an SEC team next in.
These are Ole Miss's losses. They lost to Kentucky, LSU, and Florida.
Right.
I don't think LSU is a great team. And Florida played better at the end of the year, but don't lose those games.
That Kentucky loss is awful. If they don't lose to Kentucky, they're in.
But if they don't lose to Florida in the second to last game, they're in.
True. That's true.
Because they would have been 10-2. They would have been in.
Did they beat Tennessee? No,
they didn't play Tennessee. They did beat Georgia. Okay.
So it would come down to Tennessee.
That is a good win. But again, these are Ole Miss wins. Furman, MTSU, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern. You want to write home about any of those?
So your losses.
They did beat South Carolina early. That is a good win. They beat Oklahoma. We've already talked about that. They beat Arkansas. That's not a great win. And Mississippi State, they did beat Georgia. I get it. And they beat South Carolina. So you do have a couple wins, but they keep saying all these teams have so many more wins than everybody else.
Good wins.
Good wins. Yeah.
They have bad losses.
They have bad losses.
I think they have bad losses. The Arkansas loss for Tennessee is awful, and the Kentucky loss is really, really bad.
Yeah.
That's why Georgia got in, because they didn't have really a bad loss, right? Georgia's losses weren't that bad when it comes down to it. They got beat by Bama. Okay. Again, Bama, losing to Vandy and Oklahoma don't look good, but Georgia's lost 2 of them.
They lost to Bama and they lost to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
But South Carolina, they lost to LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama. Okay. All those losses are
much better than Kentucky and Arkansas.
There, I think you have a good argument, but the problem is Ole Miss and Alabama are right there, and they lost to both of those teams.
Right.
I think South Carolina, I mean, they did have some wins. South Carolina did beat Texas A&M. They beat Missouri, and they beat Clemson. I think South Carolina's resume is better than Ole Miss's and Alabama's. The problem is they lost to Ole Miss and Alabama.
And you can't put
that team in front of Ole Miss and Alabama.
So Miami is still the next team up.
I would think so.
Because they only had 2 losses, number 1, which is less than 3.
That is true.
Correct, right? So I know their loss at the end of the year to Syracuse doesn't look good, but they still only have 2 losses. So SEC, you're not even the next team in. If Indiana doesn't make it.
They would have been, but they shouldn't have been.
They can't put Miami in over SMU because SMU made the conference championship, right? That wouldn't make sense.
Right. No, you can't.
So Indiana would have been left out, and Miami would have been.
But here's the thing, too. Can you imagine if Alabama would have gone to the SEC championship game and lost, to give them a second loss, and they get knocked out because they lost in the SEC championship game?
Correct.
If any of those SEC teams would have done that, it would have been over. So crazy. You can't sit there and be like, well, SMU cannot be punished for playing in the ACC championship game.
And I agree with that. As good or bad as SMU looked, whatever, obviously Penn State gave it to them, but Penn State's a pretty darn good football team.
Penn State's good.
Why are we not giving credit to Penn State a little bit?
Right.
Or why are we not giving credit to Notre Dame for being good? We're just saying that Indiana's awful, SMU's awful. I don't think that's as true as maybe Penn State's really good. I mean, they played really close with Ohio State. Probably should have won if James Franklin didn't run into the line 4 straight times.
Correct.
And Notre Dame, as much as we don't really like Notre Dame, and I know they lost to Northern Illinois, they're not a bad football team.
Notre Dame, I think, is pretty good. Now, we're going to find out real quick as they play Georgia.
Good, yeah.
I think Penn State is pretty darn good.
I think Penn State's better than people think.
I think Penn State would be a very slim underdog to Georgia. And honestly, I think the only reason Georgia would be a favorite against Penn State is because Georgia.
It's Georgia, and Penn State really hasn't.
I think if you had the same schedule Georgia had this year, and their name is not Georgia, I don't think they're ranked number 2, and I don't think they'd be favored against Notre Dame.
Really?
I don't.
With the same record and everything.
Same record, same wins, everything, and their team name was not Georgia.
I mean, they did have the number 1 strength of schedule allegedly.
Oh, right, and that's good. Good job.
So you're not a fan of strength of schedule at all because you think
I didn't say that.
You think that they're giving SEC teams too much credit?
I do. That's the thing. I think
I will agree with you on that.
I think strength of schedule does matter, but
who's judging that?
What's the judge of that? Because they're ranked in the top 25, we already know they give SEC a little bit.
If you beat Bama, your strength of schedule just goes up by a lot,
right?
Even though Bama lost to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, Tennessee lost to an awful team. Arkansas is awful.
Yeah.
But their strength of schedule is still fine because they beat Bama.
I mean, Georgia lost to Alabama and got humiliated for a lot of that game.
Yeah.
And then lost to Ole Miss 28-10, got dominated in the game. And really, really should have lost to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech blew that game. Good job for Georgia coming back, but Georgia Tech blew that game. Georgia Tech should have won that game. On multiple occasions, Georgia Tech should have won that game. That's the third loss. That's, by the way, a team that beat Miami, that they're saying it's a bad loss.
Correct.
Georgia Tech should have won that game.
Could have been Georgia.
Now, Georgia won it. Good job. We talked about this. Win games, move on. I get it.
Because that's probably the most important criteria right now.
Correct. But you can't sit there and be like, well, Georgia is that much better.
Right.
Well, Georgia Tech had them beat.
So are you saying that you still like the 12 team, or should we drop it to 8 to avoid these first round blowouts?
I don't know. I think it was a perfect storm of it. And the thing is, I hate all these people that want to overreact. Well, guess what? We had in a 4-team playoff sometimes. Blowouts.
Yeah,
Michigan State lost 31-0, didn't score.
Oklahoma got blown
Notre
out.
Dame's been blown out multiple occasions. Oklahoma has, because they were running into these dominant Bama, Georgia, Clemson teams that just beat the piss out of them.
They were going to beat anybody
and it didn't matter. So it didn't matter if it was 4 teams, 8 teams, 12 teams, whatever like that. Right. So this whole they got blown out, we need to make it okay. Let's give it a couple of years before we want to make a radical change in the fact because teams got blown out this year.
That's another question. Does the committee make changes based off of this year, or like you said, let's give it 2 or 3 years and see if this is continuing to be a trend?
Is there going to be a perfect system? I don't think ever. You can't do it.
No, you can't.
Because I know some of the people are like, well, you should take away the first round buys for the conference championship games. Okay, maybe. But then again, what you're going to run into is the Big Ten, which I like. I get it. Right. Or the SEC is going to have 3 teams in the buys.
Yep.
They're going to. Because right now, if we went with buys, the 4 buys this year would have been Georgia, Texas, probably maybe not Ohio State, Oregon, and either Ohio State or Penn State.
Or you go Big 4 conferences, get a bye.
Okay.
That maybe, again, that'd be Arizona State, Oregon.
Georgia. But who's to say Arizona State's not a very good team?
We don't know yet.
I mean, we're going to find out because they play Texas.
That's going to be a good test.
But I think Arizona State's a little bit better than people are giving credit for. But I think so, they just play in the Big 12, so they're automatically down at the bottom.
Because people don't like the Big 12 as much.
Right.
Or the Big 12 doesn't look as tough as the SEC or Big 10.
They beat up on everybody. Why aren't they good?
Right. Because they're not the SEC.
Correct. But they did the exact same thing that the SEC team.
They beat each other up.
They beat each other up.
Yep.
I mean, the Big 10 was kind of top heavy. I will admit it. The bottom was in its
There was 4 top
But
teams.
the Big 12 beat each other up, but everybody's going to be like, well, they're just a mediocre conference. It's the exact same thing the SEC's done. So why is the SEC just giving this pass all the time? I know why. It's because they've won these national championships.
That's exactly right.
But you get to the point, it's like, who's really won those national championships?
Georgia.
Bama and Georgia. LSU had a great
LSU
year when Burrow was there,
yep.
and Auburn when Cam Newton was there.
That was a long time ago, though.
Who else?
Has it been anybody else recently?
No. Florida's been not great for a while.
Not since Tebow.
And Tebow, but that wasn't even the playoffs. That was in the BCS, right? Like who's run the SEC? So now you're saying all these teams are great because of 2 teams. And Georgia and Bama, admittedly, have been very, very good.
Yeah.
I don't think Bama's great this year, and I think Georgia's down a little bit. But they're still really, really good teams, and those teams have run it. Like, seriously, who's?
I mean, I'll look it up, but I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, Bama and Georgia, but how long ago was Auburn? I mean, LSU was 2019. That's 5 years ago. Clemson mixed in there, but they're not in the SEC.
They're not in the SEC. Like, you're looking up who's won. I mean, why is the SEC? Why is Ole Miss great? Why was Missouri ranked all year long?
They never came because the only losses were to SEC teams, right? Georgia, obviously Michigan last year, but Georgia, Bama, LSU. Then Clemson, Bama, Ohio State, Florida State, Bama. We're at 2011. Only Bama and Georgia have won multiple. LSU was one. Then 2010 was Cam Newton with Auburn. Bama. Then 2008 Florida with Tim Tebow. I mean, we're going back 16, 17 years now. How far back do we have to go?
I mean, you basically
it's Bama and Georgia.
You sprinkle in LSU and Auburn.
One LSU and one Auburn win. That's it. One LSU, one Auburn.
And I'm not trying to say Bama and Georgia are not. They were great. They were great.
Bama. It's literally Bama.
It's Bama. It's with Nick Saban.
It's right. It's Georgia for 2 years, 21 and 22.
Well, Georgia lost to Bama the 1 year, so they were up there too.
Well, so they played in it. Okay,
right. So under that, then the whole Big Ten's great.
The whole Big Ten.
It's great
because Ohio
State and then Michigan lately.
That's two teams.
Two teams.
Because
Penn State hasn't really done anything. I mean, seriously.
Okay, we got Florida State from the ACC and Clemson from the ACC. Jameis Winston, Florida State, and then, of course...
And I mean, in Big 12 would have been Oklahoma and Texas for a while, then with the SEC. I get it. Yeah. But why is the SEC getting this pass? I don't get it. I mean, I get it, but I don't like... Why is Ole Miss... What did Ole Miss really, really do besides beat up an SEC?
What has Ole Miss ever done?
They beat bad teams this year.
Yeah. So you're...
I mean, they beat Georgia. I get that. But I meant like in the non-conference. Like their non-conference schedule was awful. Like Ole Miss, they want to talk about Indiana's non-conference schedule. Ole Miss's non-conference schedule this year was Furman, MTSU, Wake Forest, and Georgia Southern.
Yeah, that's bad.
That was their non-conference. Okay, you have Wake Forest in there, okay, as their non-conference, which I guess is better than anybody Indiana played in the non-conference. But Indiana only plays 3 non-conference games.
That's true. They have more.
So they're playing 9 Big Ten teams. So that Wake Forest, you can kind of not group in the SEC, but you can group into the SEC and be like, okay, here's your 3 teams: Furman, MTSU, and Georgia Southern. Like bad. What? That's your non-conference games.
And they beat Oklahoma. It's not very good.
Yeah. I mean, Georgia did have Georgia Tech and Clemson. Okay, they had those.
That's decent, yeah.
Okay, South Carolina, they did have Clemson. Okay, so they have Clemson, but again, they play 4 non-conference games. So their other sorry, I didn't go to it.
I mean, you look at Clemson's the ACC champ, and they lost to South Carolina and Texas, who are both in the SEC. So okay, maybe.
Wait, that was South Carolina. Okay, so South Carolina did have Clemson. Their other non-conference games are. Their other non-conference games were Old Dominion, Akron, and Wofford.
Awful.
I get, again, Clemson was a non-conference game, but
that's a rivalry.
But they play 4 non-conference games. The Big Ten plays 3.
Correct.
So we're going to group Clemson in with that other ones, and you can be like, well, we did that. Well, okay. At the same time, Indiana did play 9 power conference teams.
Yeah, instead of playing Clemson, why don't you go?
So Old Dominion,
Texas or something?
Akron, and Wofford. Wofford's not in the FBS. Akron went 4-8 in the MAC, and Old Dominion went. Sorry, I hit the wrong team. Old Dominion went
the Akron Zips.
The Zips, and the Monarchs of Old Dominion went 5-7 in the Sun Belt.
So you're not saying they're dominant teams even in their weak conferences there.
That's what I'm saying. And by the way, South Carolina beat Old Dominion by 4.
Wow. Where did they struggle there?
Like you can at the same time, we look at this. Let me go to Indiana.
Does Boise have pressure on them to win?
I think they do.
Because they're not a powerful.
Yeah, people are going to want to be like, they're going to go. If Penn State blows them out.
As committee people, they're going to be like, okay, we made mistakes. But I think you're right. They need to give it a couple of years.
Okay. Now, Indiana, their non-conference was bad. They played FIU, Western Illinois, and Charlotte. Now, Western Illinois is an FBS school. I'm not trying to make excuses for Indiana's schedule. I'm just trying to say these other teams that are bragging about it.
But we've talked about Indiana before. This Indiana football is not powerhouse football, blue blood, dominant year in, year out. This is a team that's trying to make a bowl.
But this is Indiana. Like, you can say what you want about their schedule. Until they played Michigan and Ohio State, they won by 24, 74,
they blew people out.
29, 38, 14, 17, 49, 14, 37, and then they get to Michigan where they won by 5, but then they beat Purdue by 66.
They dominated their schedule.
They did.
Unlike South Carolina, who beat Old Dominion by 4.
So, I mean, like, you want to sit there and you look at it, but okay, you can't, like, so now you're just trying to say, well, the SEC is better than the Big Ten.
Just because of what?
Just because.
Just because.
I mean, that's what you're basing off, because you cannot sit there and be like, those non-conference schedules were that much better if you take the 3 teams. If you take the 3 teams, yes, I get it. Those other ones had those ones, but at the same time, it's a Power 5 school, which Indiana's playing a Power 5 school. Now, think about this too. Indiana on their schedule was Washington, who was in the national championship game last year, but they were down this year.
For sure.
Michigan, who won the national championship last year, was down this year. Michigan State, who's been down. Nebraska, who's in between. Those were teams that were on their schedule.
Yeah.
Yes, they avoided Penn State.
That was the
only one. And they avoided Oregon.
Yep. But that's going to happen.
But they had Michigan and Ohio State in back-to-back games, not back-to-back weeks.
That's going to happen, though. You're going to get it. You're not going to get all the big dogs every single
year.
You
look at Indiana's schedule to begin the year. It was Washington, Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State in 4 straight games. Should have been
normal. Yeah, those are normal teams.
And they whipped 2 of them.
Yep. No, Indiana played great through the regular season. I think they should have been. I could argue one way or another. Of course, I didn't think that they were that good because I thought their schedule was kind of weak.
Right.
But if you're going to put them in the playoff, like, why are we not giving Notre Dame a little credit here?
Right.
Maybe Indiana's a decent team, but Notre Dame's just really good. Like, why are we not giving Notre Dame any credit at all? Why are we not giving Penn State credit for being better? We're just saying that SMU and Indiana shouldn't have been there. Well, what if we put Bama in there and Notre Dame beat them by 30?
Let's think about this for a second. Indiana lost to Ohio State by 23, who Ohio State whipped, and they were both at Ohio State.
Correct.
And Ohio State whipped Tennessee. Okay, so you give them a pass. Notre Dame beat them by 10, and at the same time, let's see how Notre Dame beats against Georgia. If they come out and shut up. And they lost. They lost to Michigan by 5. Well, Michigan beat Ohio State.
Correct. So why is the Big Ten not getting credit for being?
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm not trying to say Indiana had this monster schedule this year. I get it.
No, they didn't.
But if you want to really deep and look in what they've done against these teams, they did everything they needed to do. If Bama would have blown out everybody in the schedule like Indiana did, nobody would have said a word.
And I didn't really,
because they're Bama. And if Bama would have lost to Notre Dame the way that Indiana lost to Notre Dame, nobody would say a word.
No, because it's Bama. But Bama loses to Vandy and Oklahoma, and it's like, oh, they should be in the playoffs. Because Vandy and Oklahoma are SEC teams. So apparently they get some sort of pass. But let's be honest, Oklahoma and Texas are still Big 12 teams. They haven't even been in the SEC a full year yet. Like, let's calm down.
Indiana whipped teams they were supposed to whip.
That's it.
Alabama didn't. Let's go
to – Ole Miss didn't.
That's true.
Ole Miss didn't. Tennessee didn't. You were supposed to whip Arkansas. You were supposed to whip Kentucky. You didn't do that. Bama, you're supposed to beat Vandy, and you're supposed to beat Oklahoma. You didn't do that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, at some point, they have to matter. Those games have to matter. They have to matter. And so, like I said, you deep dive down Twitter or Facebook or message boards, whatever you want to go down to.
You can spend hours
arguing. You can spend hours. And one guy literally wrote, "Wins and losses don't tell the full story." Then what does it?
Tell me what does. Tell me what does.
You can't sit there and be like, well, Bama would be favored. And we've said this all the time. Bama would be favored. Ole Miss would be favored. South Carolina would be favored. Win the games.
That you didn't even win games you were favored in.
That's the thing. We're not even talking about that you guys beat up on each other individually in that triangle of teams.
Right.
Like if you would have beat each other up.
Teams
and you're like, okay, well, they beat each other up in the top 4 teams. No.
And they beat everyone else.
No.
That didn't happen. They beat each other up, and then they also lost to other teams that they shouldn't have lost to, games they were favored in. I asked the question, what makes the SEC bet on one of these forums on Facebook? And the guy's like, well, we get I said Texas is still a Big 12 team. Let's be real. Like, they haven't even made it SEC. And he goes, well, no, they've been recruiting SEC players. I said, what is an SEC player?
Right.
Tell me. Well, they're bigger. And I said,
get out of here.
I said, okay, hold on. And I said, so you're telling me that Tennessee is bigger and better, but they're getting their butts kicked by a Big 10 team. And he comes back and goes, well, there's teams like Oregon and Ohio State that are probably compete too. I said, okay, so SEC players are bigger and better than everybody, except for a few other teams that might be out there. I'm like, make it make sense, buddy. No, stop.
Listen.
He said they were bigger.
Bama did whip Wisconsin. They did end up beating South Florida, but they were close to South Florida late. They got beat by Vanderbilt, almost lost to South Carolina, lost to Tennessee. Now they did whip Missouri and LSU and Mercer. They only beat Auburn by 14.
Yeah. No, Bama, you don't have an argument. You don't.
They shouldn't. But they do. They want to say, well, we're Bama.
You don't have an argument. You lost to Vandy in Oklahoma.
Well, and then they want to go back.
They beat Georgia. That's what they're hanging on with.
Well, they beat Georgia, and then last year they want to be like, well, we gave Michigan the best game of the year. You know what? You did. And you know why? Because, and I'm going to say this.
What was the score?
Michigan won by 7 in overtime.
Okay, Michigan beat Maryland by 7. You're saying Maryland's as good as Bama? Stop.
Michigan played their worst game of the year against Bama and still beat them.
Maybe their worst game. They only beat Maryland by 7.
That's true.
And Maryland won 4 games, so Maryland is equal to Bama, I guess, according to SEC.
But you can't sit there last year and say Michigan would have been the SEC and been in the SEC championship game. Michigan was really good last year.
Yeah, Michigan was dominant, super dominant.
And then there's Georgia. Oh, we would have beat them. What?
Beat Bama.
Beat Bama.
You can't beat Bama. You can't beat Bama. What I don't like is I don't like Oregon playing Ohio State again.
I understand that. Like, we get into that, and I get that, and I get what you're saying on
the
that.
The rankings, we got to move it around a little bit, so that stuff.
But what do you do? But at the same time, you can't manipulate the rankings just so you don't have a conference matchup in the quarterfinals. I know. Because then you get into some wacky stuff.
Then it gets sketchy.
Because, I mean, at the same time, would you love it? I mean, you might because of the SEC. You can't sit there and be like, oh, we got to make sure an SEC school is in each of the 4 little pods.
So that way they could get all 4.
They could all be in the Final Four. Right. Now, it could happen, and it's fine if it happens, but you can't manipulate them to avoid each other in the quarterfinals.
I don't know if 4 teams from one conference could get in. I think that's tough.
Well, there's 4 teams in the Big Ten. It was close.
Penn State, Oregon.
Because if Ohio State would have been up 1.
Oh, and Indiana. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, well, okay. Where you at, SEC? You only had 3 teams in the playoffs, and Big Ten had 4.
And one of them's gone.
And Big Ten had 4.
Well, that's the problem, is they can't handle it.
Is that what it is?
But nobody is saying a word about Tennessee getting whipped. It's all about SMU and Indiana getting whipped.
Yeah.
And really, Clemson didn't get whipped. Clemson was in that game. Bad Clemson.
ACC champs.
Was in that game. All right, so we were wrong. We were wrong. We both picked. Well, I picked Clemson to beat Texas. He might have picked Texas. And we both picked Tennessee. I did think Tennessee would be better against Ohio State. They weren't.
They got punched in the mouth quickly.
So we get into this the quarterfinals here. It happens on New Year's Eve or New Year's Eve.
About a week from now.
About 8 days.
New Year's Eve is the first game.
All right, so Texas and Arizona State. Let's go Penn State, Boise State.
That's the first game now.
That's the first game. Penn State looked obviously really, really good against SMU. They took 2 pick sixes around. Their offense took a little bit to get going.
That's typical Penn State, though.
Can Penn State stop Ashton Jeanty?
That's going to be the question, because I don't know that much about Boise's defense. I know Penn State's offense is a slow starting offense. They just don't get going quickly. If they cannot slow down Jeanty, it's going to be a long day for that Penn State defense. Like, he's the guy. If he is stopped, I don't think Boise State has enough to win that game. I think this game is close, though.
I think Penn State's going to do what Ohio State tried to do against Michigan a few years ago and just load up the box. And dare Boise State to beat them with the arm.
Correct.
But the thing is, Penn State's got a lot of good defensive backs, so I think they have they can put their guys on islands. And but Penn State did give up a lot of points to Oregon, but Oregon threw the ball much better, I think, than Boise State does. Listen, I like the Boise State story. I think Jeanty still should have won the Heisman.
100%.
I think they kind of keep it close, but you're right. Penn State's got to be, we're going to stop Jeanty. We're going to stop Jeanty.
You have to all out, bring everything to stop him.
Because Oregon didn't really stop him.
Nobody's really stopped him, let's be honest. Now,
the fourth quarter stopped him.
Stopping him is like 120 yards. Like, that's if you can keep him to that 120, then you might have a chance. But if he gets close to 200, you know he's going to break a long one.
Yeah, if they need to keep him from breaking a long one, and they need to keep. I think you're right. If they keep him on 150, I know that sounds funny.
No,
but if they keep him on 150, they have a really good shot. I think the biggest thing. I think yes, it's Penn State stopping Jeanty is a big, but I think the bigger storyline is, can Boise stop Penn State's offense?
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that Boise defense, because Penn State's got 2 good running backs too. Yeah, and they can.
And Drew Aller's been playing pretty well too, quarterback.
I don't think Penn State has like a game changer wide receiver like Ohio State or some of these guys do, but they can run the football.
But they have Tyler Warren, the tight end.
The tight end's a monster.
Pretty freaking good.
Well, he's like 6'6".
Which, by the way, I didn't realize he was like a quarterback in high school.
Well, I think he's got a receiving touchdown, running touchdown, and a throwing touchdown.
I saw the receiving and the running touchdown when up for Purdue, and he threw the ball back to Drew Aller at 1.2. Yeah. So I think Penn State's too much for them. I wish that Boise. I like the story. I think they deserve to be there.
Oh, for sure.
Now, should they have the bye or not? I don't know, but they deserve to be there. But I think Penn State wins this game.
Yeah, Penn State's going to win. I don't know if there's a line or anything on it yet. But yeah, Penn State's going to win. Boise needs to keep it competitive so everyone can be like, okay, that group of 5 team can compete, you know, because if Penn State comes out and just blows them out, then we're going to hear all those other same stuff we heard this week. And I don't want to hear it, but Penn State's going to win.
Listen, I know what they're going to say, but I think that the group of 5 teams, they deserve a team in the playoffs.
You have to give them a chance.
They have to have a shot.
Yeah.
With 12 teams in there, you can't be like, you know what? If we're debating on if a group of 5 teams should get in or a SEC or Big Ten team is, then you should have done better. I mean, it's the stuff we've talked about. Give a group of 5 team. I think it helps. Like we talked about from the very beginning. I think it helps with recruiting. I think it helps with all this stuff. And with all that, I just like the fact that they're in.
And the buy, yeah, that's a conversation that maybe they want to look into about giving that group of 5 a bye just because they're ranked higher than the other conference.
But see, that's the thing is like I don't think Boise State should have been ranked higher than Arizona State.
Well, then can we change the rankings that not to come out till like week 4 or something like that? You know what I mean? Like because the preseason rankings kind of set the stage for where you're going to be. So if Missouri's ranked 10th in the preseason rankings, they might not ever come out of the top 25.
Which they almost did.
Which is crazy.
And they did everything to drop out of the top 25.
Right.
And out of there. Texas and Arizona State. Look, Texas was a lot more impressive than I thought they were going to be on defense. I thought Clemson's defense would give them more troubles, and they really didn't.
Well, Clemson's first drive against Texas looked beautiful.
Yeah.
They did whatever they wanted. You have even texted me. I'm like, wow. Yeah. They scripted that really well. Yeah. They just couldn't continue it.
And then they couldn't stop
to make the adjustment,
which surprised me because I thought Clemson's defense was a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I don't know how good Arizona State's defense is, but I like their quarterback and their running back.
Yes, the first
Klubnik played really, really well for Clemson.
He did fine.
But when the Scatabo, and their quarterback are pretty good. Like I think Arizona State has a shot in this game.
Arizona State cannot get down too much early.
Right.
They have to keep it close. They have to be competitive. They got to run and pound it because I think he's a really physical back. That Texas defense is nasty, though, and I just don't know if Arizona State has enough on defense to slow down Texas. This could be a high-scoring game, though.
I think it could be. Arizona State obviously showed that they can score some points. Yeah, they scored a lot against Iowa State. Hell, they scored more touchdowns in Dallas than the Cowboys had.
Yeah.
Probably not now, but they had. I think Arizona competes really well in this game. I want them to win this game just because I'm tired of the 100%. SEC crap.
I hate it.
You
hate
Texas, so you want Arizona State to win the game. What's do they have a line on that game?
I haven't seen a line yet. I'll take a look and see what they got lines for. But Texas by 2 touchdowns. I think that's too much.
I do too. I think Arizona covers. Arizona State covers. I'm not going to go.
Probably not win it.
My upset picks were both terribly wrong last thing, and I'm reserving an upset pick in a minute. Okay. So I'm going to go Texas, but Arizona State covers.
I'm gonna go Texas as well as but I obviously I hope I'm wrong here. But yeah, I agree. Arizona State covers. I think Texas win maybe 7-10. I think Arizona State can run the ball and keep it close. Yeah. That freshman quarterback's mobile. He might cause problems for that Texas defense. I just don't know if Arizona State's defense can keep up.
I agree. All right, let's go to Notre Dame, Georgia. Listen, this is it. I mean, not this is it, but this is a big one because Notre Dame's not in the conference. They looked really good except for the Northern Illinois game. Georgia obviously is the SEC champion, but at no point this year did I think they looked like this dominant team.
I know you're still not a big fan of Georgia.
Not this year. Don't get me wrong. The 2 years they won it back to back, they were really freaking good. They were really good. You give them the props to them. They're still a really good team. I'm not trying to say they're not a good team, but I'm just saying they are not as good as they've been. And Carson Beck's out.
Carson Beck being out does change things, but that backup is a really good 5-star from somewhere. And he played against Texas and did pretty well. Got his head knocked off literally and got up and ended up scoring the winning score to win the SEC championship game. But is he too inexperienced against a pretty good Notre Dame defense?
That Notre Dame defense is good.
They're good.
They're really, really good. But here's the kicker too. If Notre Dame goes and wins this game, this is the first thing to say.
Yep.
Well, they didn't have a quarterback. Yep, okay, cool. You know what? Then maybe they should have made the playoffs because Florida State didn't make last year because of their quarterback. Yep. who got hurt, not in the championship game, but basically, and was out. Yep. Now, again, they had the automatic bid because they won the conference championship. At the same time, Georgia fans, you wanted to go off because you whipped Florida State last year without their quarterback and half their team.
Correct.
So go win. Go win. If you lose, shut up.
I mean, if you lose, the next man up, right? So if you're that good and you're the SEC and you have better players than everybody, then your backup should be good.
Because they recruited SEC players.
Because they recruited SEC players, whatever that means, I don't know. But your next guy up should be better than whatever Notre Dame can put out there. So go.
Yeah.
Georgia's still going to win this game.
I don't think so. I think Notre Dame wins.
Georgia's only favored by 1.5 points.
I think Notre Dame wins.
Low-scoring game. Low scoring. Without Carson Beck, Notre Dame's defense is good. That Georgia defense is pretty dang good.
Notre Dame 24.
Low scoring. 44.5 is the over-under.
Notre Dame.
24-20 Notre Dame?
That's 20.
That's 44.
No, I was going to go like 24-10.
10? You're not saying, ooh, okay. Georgia's not going to score many points.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But I don't think Notre Dame's going to be able to score a lot either. Where's this game at? Sugar Bowl?
Yeah.
I think Georgia's going to win. I like your 24, but I think it's like 24-20, 24-17. Okay. Right. But Georgia's going to pull it off.
I think Notre Dame wins.
Riley Leonard throws a bad interception.
He hasn't this year.
He hasn't. It's time.
Listen,
Kirby Smart out coaches Freeman.
That's possible, but I think Notre Dame's better. I think Notre Dame's better than Georgia, especially with Carson Beck. I think Notre Dame's better.
But Carson Beck hasn't been that awesome this
year. No, he hasn't.
This guy might be better.
This might be the best defense Georgia plays all year. Has played all year.
And I think it's the best defense Notre Dame has played too. That's why I think low scoring. I think this.
But I don't think Georgia's defense is great. I mean, Ole Miss threw up 28 on them.
Boring game.
Okay.
Probably the most boring game out of the four. Just because I don't think
boring. Correct.
Boring.
Close.
Fight.
Probably.
Close. Yeah. Boring. Not fun. Now. If you want to go a fun game, the next game we're going to talk about, that's going to be a good
Ohio State plays Oregon. The first time they played, I think Oregon won 32-31 in probably one of the best regular season games of the year. So,
for sure.
Yes, you can be like, oh, I hate that they're playing again. I get it. But
now
it's fun.
The good news is they can't play a third time.
Yeah.
That is the good news.
Right.
Unlike Texas and Georgia, who could fool around and play a third time, which I hope doesn't happen. But yeah, the Ohio State had a chance to come down against Oregon, and Will Howard slid, and the time ran out.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
Will Howard does what Will Howard is going to do. I mean, granted, he didn't do it against Tennessee, but he didn't have to. He just threw the ball to Jeremiah Smith and let him take care of business. Take that away. Does Ohio State turn the table here and win this game? Because they've already played once, and it was close. It's hard to beat a good team twice.
It is. I think Oregon wins this game. I just, Ohio State didn't get tested at all by Tennessee, so they were able to just run through it, and now all of a sudden they're back. You know, the Michigan game was just a blip in the road. We meant to lose that game. Blah blah blah.
Right.
I think Oregon's going to test them again, and we've seen what happens when, Ohio State beat Penn State in a close game, and they beat Nebraska in a close game, but neither one of those teams I think they thought threatened to lose to.
Definitely not Nebraska.
Whereas they shriveled up against Michigan, and if it gets close against Oregon again, they've already lost to them, so I think they might shrivel up again. And do you trust Will Howard to win you a game?
No, and I don't trust Ryan Day either.
No.
I think he had a good script against Tennessee, and I think Tennessee just came out and got punched in the face and couldn't recover. Oregon, that's not going to happen to Oregon. No. That's not going to happen to Oregon. Oregon's too much. Oregon throws it around. Dylan Gabriel's not going to make a mistake. Will Howard's going to make a mistake. Oregon already – haven't they beat them the last two times they've played them, Oregon? This year, and then was it last year? They beat them last
2 years. It was
ago.
2 years ago in Ohio State.
So I think Oregon has a good idea of how to beat Ryan Day, and Ryan Day and Will Howard are not going to win the big one. This is a big one. Oregon wins,
and it's at the Rose Bowl, which it's nice. Funny because it's like the Oregon is in the Big Ten, but it's kind of that Pac-12 Big Ten feel.
It really is. Yeah.
So
Ohio State's favored by 2.5.
It's surprising.
It's
a recency bias a little bit.
That's exactly what
they saw them whip Tennessee, and they're like, "Oh my God, they're good." They forget the fact that they scored 10 points against Michigan.
Correct. And they forget the fact that Oregon beat them already this year.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter.
I think it's close. Ohio State 100% can win this game. Ohio State's talented enough to win this whole thing.
Yes.
I hope Oregon wins because I really don't want Ohio State to go any further.
Oregon wins.
I think Oregon wins. All right.
Please.
Yeah. We get into the semifinals. They'll be after New Year's. We're close to it. So Merry Christmas to everybody and Happy Merry New Year and all that stuff. So we'll get into the NFL in our next pod because, we just talk so much. But let's just talk about fantasy football for a little bit because now we are on a Monday. So you are 28 points up on our buddy.
And he's got the Packers defense, which plays tonight, Monday night.
If you win, you play me.
In the championship.
It's the two bald guys for the championship.
Fantasy football championship.
We both finished the regular season 7-7.
We're not bragging about that.
And you had to win the last week of the year just to make it into the playoffs.
And then I've had to have basically the two best weeks all year just to win last week and possibly this week.
And in your quarterfinal matchup, you played a guy that would have beat everybody else in the league that you except for you.
Right. And I never score that.
And I've been lucky. Like I slipped by in the first round, and I beat my brother because Jalen Hurts got hurt, which I like. It's good for my fantasy team, but I hate when people get hurt.
We don't want Jalen hurt.
And I made a last-second adjustment, like 5 minutes before the game started. I put
you literally standing in my garage, being like, should I do this? Sure.
5 minutes. Jerome Ford over Rico Dowdell, however you pronounce his name, and I won by 17, and Jerome Ford scored 17 more points than Dowdell did. Coaching.
So, yeah, come on. Saints need to put up some points. Don't turn it over against the Packers.
Honestly, you just need need the Packers to not have a defensive touchdown.
That's it.
If the Packers don't have a defensive touchdown, I don't think it's possible for them to get 28 points.
28.
They would have to shut them out and have a ton of interceptions and stuff like that. So it's possible. We've seen it happen because you're against my buddy Sam. Sam did this to my son last year, where Dallas' defense scored 44 points.
Right.
And he came back and won.
I just need the Saints to hold on to the football, maybe get a couple touchdowns in there. He can score anywhere from 0 to 27 points.
Yeah, because if he scores 28 and ties you, he's got more on the bench that would beat you.
Ah, man.
So it's possible.
I feel good about my chances.
You should feel good about your chances. The defense throwing up 28 points, but we've seen weirder things happen.
Correct.
And the Saints are not good. And the Packers are known for forcing turnovers. So you're right. You need the Saints just to score a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just don't turn it over.
Correct.
Don't give a defensive touchdown.
No sacks.
That's it. Sacks, turnovers. That's it.
Yeah.
And we'll be fine.
Spencer Rattler.
My gosh. Come on, Spencer.
You're holding your
my fantasy dreams are.
And Spencer Rattler. And you just need him not to screw up too bad.
That's it.
You don't need him to do anything crazy.
I don't care if you win or not. Don't make a mistake. And that would be funny if we were playing in the championship. I don't think we've played in the championship.
No, I won the very first one that we ran. It's my league. I think we're in year 6. I won the very first one, but it wasn't against you, and you've won.
I won 2 years ago.
So if you win, we playing each other would be the first 2-time winner in our league.
Okay.
Because it's been a different winner every year. And the year you won, I don't know how you did it because I think you were one of the lowest scoring teams in the league. And you got hot at the right time. But you know what? That's what fantasy football is.
That's why it makes it fun.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
So in my other league, it's the same thing. I had a win the last week. I finished 7-7. I made the playoffs. But my team has gone absolutely berserk and scored over 200 points 3 straight weeks.
Yes, they have.
And I'm just going crazy. So I posed this question to you before we get on, but let's just talk about it a little bit. So we're playing in the Superflex League where you can play 2 quarterbacks. And the guy I'm going to play only has 2 quarterbacks. One of them is Jalen Hurts, who might not play next week. We play in a league where you have, that play money to do waiver wires. Do I go out and just snatch up the top 2 quarterbacks that are out there just to keep him from going to his team? Is that shady or is that strategic?
So I would say it's shady if he had no other options. Actually, I don't know. It's still strategic. It's still coaching. He has other options. He doesn't have to play a quarterback.
He doesn't have to play a second quarterback. You normally do, though.
Correct. You normally do because they can get you some points. Now, is Jalen Hurts going to play? If I'm the Eagles, I don't play him.
Right.
But you never know. But I don't play him. Now, they're set. They're fine. Don't risk him. You got the playoffs coming up. I don't think so. I think that's strategy. That's like why are we playing these games if we're just going to, not try to win type of thing. That's kind of how I look at it. Now, would I be mad if you did that? I'd be like, that son of a, what? But it's fair, right? It's not against the rules. You're not cheating.
Right. And I had the money, and he has none.
He can't outbid you for these players. He can't outbid me for any players. Now, who do you go get, though? Do you go get the Eagles backup if he's not already taken?
I think you do. I think you do, right? Because that's the better team.
If I'm him and Jalen Hurts goes down, I'm trying to go get, was it Kenny Pickett?
Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. I'm trying to go get Kenny Pickett real quick because he's going to obviously play for the Eagles. You go get Kenny Pickett and maybe another quarterback that you think might
be good. Kenny Pickett is on the waiver wire. Okay. So I would, probably.
Go get Kenny Pickett and one other guy if you want to, and then
force him to play like
he can play
Mason Rudolph
or no quarterback at all, right?
Correct. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, why don't you have another quarterback on your roster?
Correct. Right.
So I mean, this
is all about coaching. This is all about coaching. It's all about strategy. Fantasy football is kind of, you get lucky with who you pick sometimes, and strategy, like you just playing Ford out of nowhere, and he ends up basically winning it for you. So I don't know. I don't think so. Obviously, I'd be mad if I was the other guy and he did that, but what are you gonna do? I mean, where do you spend his? Maybe that's a lesson to be learned. Like,
don't spend your money so much.
Save some of your money just in case you get into the playoffs and you need that.
Yeah,
I think you do it.
Okay,
I think you do it. I don't know what the
listeners all about winning, right? I mean, right? Within the rules. Within the rules. It's not shady.
You're not cheating.
I'm not conspiring with somebody else.
No, you're strategizing. Coaching.
He's coaching.
It's the most coaching you could do for fantasy football. Right. Is make a move. That's all you can do.
Everything else is just guessing.
Just sit and watch and guess and hope that the team.
Like I did with my guys last night.
That's it.
I mean, that's the other thing too. I played Caleb Williams instead of
I saw that
instead of Patrick Mahomes, and Caleb Williams scored 3 more points than Patrick Mahomes did.
I saw that too.
My brother didn't play Atlanta's defense, and he played Indianapolis defense.
Coaching.
He would have beat me if
coaching.
It's all coaching.
It's all coaching.
I mean, it comes to the playoffs. So
that's all you can do as fantasy football is put teams and players in that you think will get you the most points.
Yeah.
So you're trying to prevent him from getting points.
Correct.
Take the quarterbacks.
I think that's especially Kenny Pickett, because he's going to go.
Do you know this guy?
Not yes, but
yes,
no.
But no. Okay.
Like he's one that runs the league.
Oh, all right. Well, forget him.
And we write together. So yes, I know him, but have I ever met the guy? No, I've never actually met him personally.
Sorry, bud.
It's his league too.
It's his league. He should know better.
And he invited me late into the league. So
you might not get an invite. That's the other thing.
No,
I think that's strategy. Why wouldn't you do that, right? You're trying to win this thing.
Yeah, right. You're trying to win.
Why would you leave Kenny Pickett up for him to pick up?
That's true.
And then Kenny Pickett goes off for 40 points next, and then you lose by 10 points. I mean, you're going to be mad at that.
That's true.
If that happens.
I mean, if all things are the same though, this week he scored 146 points, and right now I'm at 202 points.
So even if Hurts doesn't get hurt, maybe another 20 points on there.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, I'm at 202, and I still have Jacobs to play tonight.
Okay,
my team is blown up.
You're in good shape.
I hope they show up for the championship.
You might be fine regardless of what happens, but
why take the chance?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't know. You don't know who's going to get hurt on your team.
Shut your mouth.
I'm just saying.
Bite your tongue.
I'm just saying. Would he do the same thing? Probably.
I mean, you do. You got to do it to block people, right?
Correct. Pick people up. Are you gonna get Kenny Pickett, or is there another options out there?
I mean, the players, the quarterbacks are slim because you can have two, on the team.
Right.
So available.
He's gonna get a quarterback.
I mean, it's Mason Rudolph, Aiden O'Connell, Spencer Rattler, Dorian Thompson Robinson, and then Kenny Pickett. If Hurts isn't playing.
See how Spencer plays tonight against the Packers. If he does really well against the Pack, maybe pick him up and Kenny Pickett and say good luck with Mason Rudolph.
I mean,
or Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
Good luck with Aiden O'Connell.
I mean, at least Aiden O'Connell has Brock Bowers to throw to.
True.
I want to see who they play next week.
Well, that's a factor too.
So, I mean, Mason Rudolph did have a decent game against the Colts. They scored, I think, 34 points against them. Let's see what we got next week. So
who they play can make a whole world of difference if they're playing.
So next week the Titans play the Jaguars. And the Raiders play the Saints. God, they both suck. So the Eagles play the Cowboys, who give up some points. So, but yeah, I think I'll go get Kenny Pickett and then pick one of the other ones.
Who do you think's gonna have the best day out of those three?
I don't know.
It's kind of a toss-up there.
That's a toss-up. Well, then Rattler plays the Raiders. Like, that's just a bad game. Who cares about that game next week? Raiders and Saints.
Yeah, my Raiders
the Titans, Jaguars.
Oh, my gosh. Awful. The Raiders beat the Jags, so the Titans will probably – you might as well pick up Mason Rudolph.
You didn't want that to happen.
No. My wife's like, why are you cheering against him? I'm like, listen, we need a high draft pick. And they have 3 losses, and now Raiders have 3. There are 3 wins. The Raiders have 3 wins.
Yeah, and the Giants, I think the Giants have 3.
The Giants won. Giants beat up on somebody they shouldn't have.
No, the Giants lost. They got their butts kicked by the Falcons.
Oh, that's right.
They're 2-13, and they play the Colts next week.
Dang it, the Giants are going to get the first pick.
I mean, the Panthers won against. They're 4-11.
Yeah, well, the Raiders were at 2 wins. They could have been.
Now you're tied with the Titans, Jaguars, and Browns. Jeez. And well, the Titans, Jaguars play each other, so one of those teams loses. The Jets are 4-11. Well, the Patriots are 3-12 also.
Jeez. Now the Giants are locked in on a number 1 pick here, unless they fool around and win. Stupid Raiders.
They're not going to fool around and win.
No,
they're bad. They're pretty bad. All right, we'll come back next time. We'll get more in the NFL, and then maybe we'll talk about more college stuff because there's always stuff to talk about.
College loaded stuff, lots of stuff.
But this is our last one before Christmas. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And until next time, I'm Adam.
I'm Tony. Thanks for listening.